doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself so that if you have something to say, you can press unmute, which is at the bottom of your screen if you're on a computer. If you are on a phone, if you touch the screen, it should come up with a little microphone, and then you can unmute yourself as you wish and as you need. So yes, go and help yourself to our non-communion communion. So what I'm going to do is just give you a brief update, an outline of what our consolidation, who our consolidation committee is, and then I'm going to invite them to kind of speak about by subcommittees what is happening. So from St. Paul's, it's been Jim Mara, Leslie Schulk, Frank Hartman, Sue Dahl, and Melissa Ricia. Danny Dahl was on it and has stepped back. So we're one short on the St. Paul's side at the moment. And then on the Good Shepherd side, we have Barry Schaefer Sr., Don Huff, Julie Riker, Lois Kuhn, Nola Skinner, Ray Ann Perry. So the 12 of them, now 11, have been meeting via Zoom. We met once in person to talk about our 6 subgroups, which is our first step. And so we have 6 subgroups, and mind you, they all have ampersands in them, so they all are and. So we have worship and program, community building and fellowship, community service and outreach, property and facilities, governance and legal, staffing and budget is our 6 subcommittees. And we talked a little bit about what their jobs will be. So at this point, I'm going to invite, I think it's Jim and Rayanne are our heads of worship and program. It's actually, we're going to go, I think most people are more concerned about, let's start with property and facilities. So Barry and Frank, if you're around and can unmute yourself and share just a little bit about what all you and your subcommittee has been working on and what the general plan is for facilities and property. Are you on? Barry's not on.
Is Barry on?
I'm not sure. I see Dana's on, but I'm not sure if Barry's with him. So
yeah, Barry's not on right now. It's at work.
I wasn't sure if he was working today or not. All right, Frank, will you share?
Okay. Property has met as a subgroup, and we toured both St. Paul's and Good Shepherd. We looked at both facilities, and what we did is we looked at both facilities and decided what the best course of action was going to be. St. Paul's does have some technical issues with the piping and stuff at St. Paul's. Good Shepherd is a better facility health-wise. It also has a security system and a generator backup system, which St. Paul's does not. Good Shepherd also is better facilitated for handicap accessible, so it's easier to modify for the handicap.
Flat. Yeah, get in better.
So that's what we're looking at. And we met to look at how we can better equip everything for consolidating St. Paul's to move to Good Shepherd.
So thank you, Frank. So it's the recommendation of that committee that has been put together to look at buildings that down the road, eventually post-consolidation, we would be just at the Good Shepherd property, correct?
Correct. It's better equipped to consolidate everything over to Good Shepherd because we're going to have more problems with the piping at St. Paul's. It's going to cost us more money to try to fix everything at St. Paul's than it is to try to renovate Good Shepherd.
And I also think handicap accessibility will be huge. And so the fact that that Good Shepherd's building has better handicap accessibility will be especially needed.
Correct.
All right, any questions on that for property and facilities? You can raise your hand, you can unmute yourself, you can type in however you wish to communicate. People a moment. All right, something comes up, just type it into chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you. And because of that, Sue, I'm going to lower your hand so I don't think that you are asking a question since that's been up since worship. All right. Let's see, I think it's Leslie and Lois are in charge of, oh, actually we have a question from Tiffany. Frank, has anyone looked into a new building altogether?
No, we have not looked into a new building altogether, only because the financial status of Good Shepherd and St. Paul's, I don't know if we have the funds to erect or make a whole new building at all.
Yeah.
Pastor Beck, are you there?
Yep. Hey, Barry.
How are you?
Good. So Frank gave us the update from the Facilities and Property Committee, our subcommittee.
I apologize. I'm working outside.
Missing worship.
A great reprieve, though. I'm dying out there.
All right.
Okay. The only thing I have is from when Frank and I and the group met over at the church and at a Good Shepherd. Nothing has changed since. I did give Frank the information for another realtor, the woman from Hawthorne, Hathaway, or I forget, I don't know. But they do a lot of big building properties, you know what I'm saying? So they have the foresight to see apartments or something like that, whatever, I don't know. But anyway, Frank has the information, so whatever they decide to do with it, they can, you know.
So, I think as going back to Tiffany's question about one building, it hasn't really been on our radar. It is a possibility, but that would also put consolidation probably back up to take an additional year, as we would have to probably sell at least one building in order to have the down payment for a second building. And then we'd also be starting this new congregation with a mortgage and with debt. And right now, we don't have that. And it would be nice to start a new congregation without that mortgage debt as part of our experience. So.
Okay, yes.
All right, any other questions for facilities and property?
Frank, have you guys talked about it?
Yeah, Frank gave us all the update, Barry.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Should have told you were first. All right, Leslie and Lois, I believe and I don't have everyone written down on who's our subcommittee chairs of what committee, but community service and outreach. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Okay.
I can go, I guess, and Lois, if you just want to add or think of anything else. So
Sure.
Our committee is actually called Evangelical Outreach and Community Service.
Sorry.
So we met, myself and Lois, with our subcommittee, and just going over all of the things that both congregations currently do, and then what we want to keep, what we think maybe is not so strong and we can get rid of, but then also to come up with ideas that if all of this does happen and we are one new congregation, what other new ideas do we have?
They need a new
As
whatever that problem.
As for us, a couple of the big things, of course, the biggest, I think, is food pantry. And for me, myself, I would like to see food pantry to stay a staple on the South Side because of the people we serve. Not sure if that's going to be able to happen. But we just went through all of the outreach we have, and we have a pretty big list once we sat down and really talked about it. And there wasn't too much on the list that we thought we would want to get rid of. But we did come up with a couple of ideas as far as if we are together, to really maybe get involved, since we will be at Good Shepherd's building, to really get involved with the new St. Luke's Hospital and do some outreach there, possibly, you know, with nursing or, you know, see what we could come up with there, as well as the nursing home that is only, you know, 2 blocks away, to go in and get our youth in there maybe, and just reach out to the community that way. Since we have met, my committee doesn't even know this, but I did reach out to Pastor Joe down at Christ Methodist via email. Their building is one that I had an idea that maybe the pantry could move to and remain on South Side. He has not answered that email as of yet. But as we know, they lost their secretary too, like we did at St. Paul's. So just waiting to see. So just a side note for facilities and property, just if once you're really we're really kind of getting into it, if maybe we could think of a spot that the food pantry could suffice at Good Shepherd. But that's kind of where we stand. Lois, do you have anything to add?
I think you pretty much covered it, but yeah, we do have a lot of outreach that I think combined we can do some wonderful things. So.
Any questions for Evangelical Outreach and Community Service? I got the name correct this time last time.
That's okay. I did think also when we met that I'm thinking both congregations, the evangelical side is a little bit difficult for both of us, which I think is probably true throughout the greater church, not just with our 2 congregations. Mm-hmm. So I think we would really have to focus on evangelical part of it to come up with some crafty ideas on how to get the word out about Jesus.
Yeah. Any questions for that subcommittee? All right. Julie and Melissa are in charge of staffing and, no, Dawn and Melissa are in charge of staffing and budget. Any, Dawn or Melissa? I haven't seen Melissa yet, but I know Dawn's on, so.
Our subcommittee hasn't actually met as of yet, but what we will be doing is working with property and facilities as to what type of renovations and building a budget for the pre-consolidation and then a combined consolidation working budget for after the consolidation has taken place. On a side note, the secretary at both is vacant at both churches right now, both congregations. So we are in the process of hiring a joint secretary to fulfill the needs of both congregations. So that is moving forward and should be finalized in the next few weeks. But as far as what type of renovations, I see that as a question that popped up. The property and facilities will be making recommendations, and we'll have to evaluate as to what we can and can't afford to do and kind of move forward from there.
Tim Case he's the sexton at Good Shepherd. I know many people know as he was the longtime, recently retired head of facilities for the Easton Area School District. When this was mentioned to him a few months ago, he already had like lists going of renovations, and he's like, you know, give me your budget and how great of a scheme can he have. I think we can do the full renovations or just, you know, paint. So, and everything in between, and figure out a little bit of the budget. All right. Anything else for staffing and budget questions? As of now, as far as the staffing side, it would be we're hiring one combined secretary for the 2 congregations, so that person would stay on. Hopefully you'd keep me as your pastor, but you would have to actually call me again once the consolidation is complete. But if you want to move on with a new pastor at that point, I'm okay with that too. And then also As far as music and Sexton, that is still up in the air, but both Ryan and Kristen and Mark and Tim have all been brought in on those conversations already, and they know that they're happening. And can I speak for you in saying just, I think all four of them have graciously said whatever the need of the congregation is what's good for the congregation. So yeah, is that a good way of putting it? So,
could I say something too?
yes, go ahead, Dot. I believe that's Dot.
Well, I was,
Sure.
never mind. Yes. I was thinking that we are in a great location, and I don't know that there's many churches. I don't think there's any churches in Wilsonboro that are equal to what we have there. And the way the church is laid out, and we have the school for the children, and that was a big asset to our church to bring people in too. And as an older member of Good Shepherd, I'm glad that we have an easy to get into church. I have been going over to Southside, and those steps are really hard for people to. I know they have the church, they have that chair seat, but it was. It's just something to think about, and perhaps that would all be changed anyway. I know you're talking about one church, and that would be it.
Yeah, and so most likely would be to be at the Good Shepherd building. So something the plan would be to be at the Good Shepherd building. So as it is the better building for handicap accessibility and for the issues that Frank all laid out earlier. So. Yeah,
there's things that need to be done. I realize that. But that was just in my mind as I'm sitting here listening to everybody talking. I didn't hear that mentioned. Okay, thank you.
Oh yeah, and the plan is to keep the nursery school still up and running throughout the entire time. So,
of course.
All right. Sue and Julie are in charge of governance and legal. Can the two of you speak to what you're tasked with and where you're at?
Sorry, I haven't talked much yet today. Right? So we haven't met yet. I've actually been kind of self-quarantined this past week. My daughter had to be tested because she was exposed to somebody. So I didn't want to go around other people. So we didn't meet this week, but what we are going to do when we do meet is our job with governance is first steps we'll be working with the lawyers, just make sure that everything is going on task. And if we do decide to come together as one congregation, we're going to need new bylaws. And so that'll be our job, is to write the bylaws, write the mission statement. And when all of that is said and done, then our committee is going to be pretty much done after everything is set in motion and moving. I would like to reach out to Good Shepherd members if anybody is interested in joining with me. I have room on my committee, so if anybody would be willing to work through this with me and with Sue and her committee, that members that she got from St. Paul, that would be wonderful. Sue, is there anything you want to say after that?
No, the attorney will help us with dissolving both corporations, Good Shepherds and St. Paul's, and forming a new one. We'll have to pick a new name. And then we have reached out to Steve Mulder, who's an attorney in Easton, and he's pretty reasonable. And we've worked with him before with Hay Cemetery. So, but we haven't met with him or anything yet because we're not at that point. But Marcia Plantone and Donna Uticella have agreed to serve representing St. Paul's. And then, there'll be the whole, when we get to that point, the sale of the St. Paul's building and like Julie said, the new constitution and bylaws and once we get moving, if we do go through with this, it will be a pretty busy committee, I think, because we also have to do the 401c. Again, shouldn't be difficult because we're already churches. So. But that's all I have.
Any questions for governance and legal? Okay, so a question that Betty asked about consolidation instead of merger. There is a difference. The merger is there's one entity that takes on the other and kind of absorbs it. And so even if we came up with a new name, all of our legal things, everything would still be under either Good Shepherd or St. Paul's, whatever the surviving entity is. Consolidation means that we take two different, and they both get rid of their legal shells and we form one new committee, one new congregation. So it's basically a legal difference. It will also then help us, I think, long-term as far as building a relationship that it's not the one name still gets stuck around. And so it's still, whatever church or whatever, it's going to be hard enough being in one building. That was an older, that was one of the previous congregation's buildings, but I think even more so if we kept the name.
Right.
Merger almost always means that one entity pretty much gives up everything and the other stays pretty much the same. In consolidation, there's joint sacrifice on both sides in order to become one new thing. So colloquial, you can use the same term, but legally we will be looking at the consolidation process instead of the merging process. So. As far as time length, Betty, no, they take about the same length of time. Consolidation might be a little bit longer, but like one extra step because both congregations have to dissolve legally first. But as far as time frame, not really. So, and it is the one that's recommended by the ELCA in our circumstance. Merger works best when it's one larger church that is strong and established, that's kind of taking over a really dying neighboring church, and we are not in that situation at all, where the two congregations are equal in a lot of ways. So, or if one is greater than the other in some way, then it's flipped that in the other, so by other measurements.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I think then that leaves us with community building and fellowship, which Nola is on. Danny was also on it, but he's, as I said, stepped down. And I know Nola has been having some technical issues. Nola, are you able to get on? Yes, I see you.
I'm here, but I'm like in and out. Right now I have no video of anybody else.
Well, we get to see you, so.
Okay. Everybody else has been freezing up and disappearing on me. So I'll do the best I can. We also have not met, and my co-chair has stepped down. So I am in need of a from St. Paul's to step up as a co-chair. So we have one opening on the committee. Our goal is to blend the two families into one. So we want each other to get together and know each other and, learn to coexist and share what each other loves about themselves.
All right, so yeah, community building and fellowship is probably the committee that's going to stick around the longest, as they are the one that will be about us sharing and continuing to build bonds and relationships even if consolidation is legally, we are one new congregation. And I was wrong, we have one more group, worship and program. Jim and Rayanne are in charge of that. Oh, actually, quick question. Any questions for the community building and fellowship? This is the one, if we were in person, would be doing social events and ways to see each other. And it's the one that's probably the greatest currently impacted by our pandemic. There's only so much socialization you can do on Zoom. So, all right, Jim and Rayanne, worship and program.
Hi, Ray.
You want me to start?
Yep.
Okay.
Worship and programming, we're working very closely with Kristen and Ryan to take both worship styles and both ways of celebrating various holidays and combining the best of both. The pandemic has actually kind of helped that a little bit because we've been having one service instead of two separate services. But so that'll be kind of our main focus on, you know, how are we going to worship and bring in both styles of worship together. As far as programming goes, we're in the process of trying to reach out to any outside groups who use our facilities because we want to assure them that they still have a home, but we need to kind of survey them and decide like who needs the facilities on which days and whether they meet monthly or weekly, and what kind of storage spaces they need. So the two parts of our committee are basically, you know, working with consolidating the worship and the Sunday school and Bible school, and then also consolidating facility usage for our outside groups like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and AA and the seniors and the quilters and so forth. So we're kind of working on that right now. Jim?
Okay. Yeah, we're just kind of concentrating on, with the groups is, first of all, if they can move, and second of all, if they're willing to move. And then when we find that out, then we can figure out what kind of space they need and time frame and things like that. So we kind of split up, you know, like I said, we're having Kristen and Ryan concentrate on worship, which is, I think, an obvious good choice. And then the rest of us are just concentrating on our outside groups. So.
Any questions for worship and program? When brief explanation, when Rayanne said about holidays, yes, Christmas and Easter, but also those like smaller, more minor church holidays like All Saints Day and Christ the King and things like that, and how we celebrate them and what are those traditions, and both taking some of the traditions that our congregations have had and either incorporating them and merging them or coming up with something new that can be meaningful for the new congregation. So, all right, so those are our 6 subcommittees. Some of you have been asking questions as we've gone along. If you have any others, again, I invite you to either digitally raise your hand or to unmute yourself, or you can type it as the easiest option for you. Give people a few questions. I know there's questions that you all have. As you think of them, we will be meeting again next Saturday night at 7 o'clock at Hayes Cemetery. Bring your own chair, wear a mask. It'll probably still be hot even at 7 o'clock. Encourage people who have not been on this call to join us that way. I have also been recording worship on our YouTube page and on Facebook. But probably not until after that meeting in the cemetery next week. We will, and if it's so please, we're going to try so that have you can hear people, because we will still have to be at a distance. Questions, concerns?
Pastor, you were just a little bit broken up there, like when you were talking, and I'm not sure if you said this, but I just think it's really important that we get the word out that we are meeting next Saturday for people that are not on Zoom or Facebook, because I'm sure we all know that we have a lot of people out there that have not been to worship since the pandemic. So if you know of people who you think have not been to worship in any way, and I just encourage people to come and hear this information. So if you know of anybody, just spread the word that we're meeting next weekend, And if people need rides, let people know, because I know myself, I would be willing to pick people up if they want to come.
And encourage people who haven't been to worship in person to call in, because you know, right now we have at least 4 people on the phone. That way, call in and yes, then call in and listen to worship and also these conversations. As far as keeping you all up to date, our plan is to continue with these after worship meetings. It will be on Zoom on a regular basis, so probably at the longest once every other month. Just kind of depending on the pace of where we are at in the consolidation committee is at in the process and the subcommittees, without overwhelming. If we were in, as I said at the beginning, if we had the time, you'd be doing this once a month of just an informal coffee hour thing and not something more formal. But it's the pandemic and everything has changed, so it constantly changes. If you think of something, reach out to myself, reach out to one of the committee chairs who's been speaking on this call. I see a lot of names that a lot of you are serving on subcommittees, and I forgot to ask the committee chairs to share who was serving on their subcommittees as they spoke. But we can include, reach out to those who will send out an email and Facebook information about who those our committee members are, with their contact information again, and trying to also get a letter out. That's a little hard right now. We don't know the secretary, so hopefully that's going to be resolved soon. Any other? Okay. As far as the secretary update, we have done interviews, and hopefully an offer being going is in the process of being granted. So I don't remember keep up, and I haven't touched the computer. So any other questions? All right. If you like to I think Zoom a lot. I guess very long. So, let's see. And then yeah, I will post stuff as there's contact information on via an email to everyone with that will go out probably. I'll try and do it later today so you have everyone's contact information who's on the committee. And so everyone who gets our emails can have those people's contact information in case it comes up.